Welcome. Today we're going to take a quick tour of Mercury Flash. As you can see, the first thing that you will see when you bring up Mercury Flash is that Mercury is a web-based desktop. On your desktop, you can put various widgets that can be positioned anywhere that you want that can show you certain things such as U2, seat usage, current memory available, system load, LCTs in use. You can even get a graph that shows you how many files are properly sized in overflow and badly overflowed or in level 2 overflow. This is based on the most recent analysis of the system. There's also an alert widget that will bring attention to any problems that appear on the system. The system can even notify you via email in the event that there is a problem, so that rather than having to monitor 24/7, Mercury does the monitoring for you and notifies you when you need to be notified. The modules in here allow you to do things such as managing the accounts on the system. These are the accounts that are in the UD or UV accounts file. So you can manage those, you can drill into those, make modifications, set parameters, and you can even lock out accounts or add new ones to that list. In addition to that, we have the database administration module. This allows you to run analysis and resizing. The account analysis is done here, where you can easily select the accounts that you want to analyze and launch that analysis. That will bring up a monitor display that will show you the progress of the accounts that you've specified to analyze. As you can see here, we've analyzed 3 accounts and they're all complete now. Once analysis is complete, you can actually either convert files. The file conversion utility allows you to convert files from, say, 32-bit static to 64-bit static or to dynamic files. Both 32 and 64-bit dynamic. The file stats, or files to resize, allows you to look at the statistics that were collected during the analysis phase and allows you to zoom in at a particular file. You can look at all the statistics, everything that's the current statistics, as well as the proposed values to apply. On any of them, you can actually scroll through, see any of the analysis information that's out there on any file. You can sort by column if you want to. Simply by clicking that, you can look at anything that you want there. So if we wanted to look at, larger files, we could look at that information there. The ones that are pre-checked are the ones that during the analysis phase met certain preset conditions for resizing. So these have been automatically flagged for resizing. At this point, you can either check additional files or uncheck files that you don't want to particularly resize. You can do that for each of your accounts. Once you have identified the accounts that need to be resized, then it's a matter of simply going to the Start Resizing utility, where all the accounts that have at least one file checked to be resized will be displayed. At this point, you can easily check the files that you want and hit Start Resize. This will cause the monitor display with the status of the files or accounts that are being resized. At this point, those 2 accounts have been resized and we can proceed. The system is ready to go. At this point, you can go back into the monitor if you want to. If during the analysis phase any files are found to have damage, they would show up in the repair files list. Anything from the repair file list, if there were any here, would be, if you select them to repair, Mercury will make backups of the files prior to doing the repair. It will perform the repairs, and then it will reanalyze those files to make sure that there are no further issues with those files. The File Explorer allows you to zoom in on any particular file that you want on an account-by-account basis. So we could drill into, so we could look at this Flash account. This is going to show us all of the files in here, and you're going to notice there's some icons here as well. Under the indices, this icon indicates that there are indexes available that have been created for this particular file. The query analysis indicates that there is analysis data collected, and if there was an icon under triggers, it would indicate that we had triggers present on this file as well. By clicking on the file, we can drill into that particular file, and we can view the dictionary, and we can see the ones that are indexed. We can focus in on just the indexed files and see what we have that's indexed. You'll also notice that there's a usage field here. Mercury has the ability to intercept and identify any query that's taking place on a configured account and identify what fields are being selected upon, whether the field is indexed or not. Non-indexed fields would show up down here. This gives you the ability to see how often a dictionary entry is being used for queries, or how little it's being used for a query. And you can make determinations from this as to whether you wanted to continue with that index or not. So for example, if I wanted to eliminate parent, I could delete that index, which would now move it down to the non-indexed field. At any point, I could go out there and re-index that field, which would turn it again into an index, and then I would have to go out and build that index as well. All that kind of maintenance can be done right from Mercury rather than have a log into the accounts and doing it all at the ECL or TCL prompt. If your system if your file has triggers on it, the triggers would show up here. Mercury has the ability to add multiple triggers to a single slot so that it will handle taking care of all that. You just basically specify the programs you want on the trigger and the order you want them called. And that is it. Mercury can do that. Mercury can also be, if you do not have multiple triggers enabled within Mercury, then only a single trigger would be displayed, and you could still maintain those single triggers. In addition to that, you can schedule most of your maintenance tasks. You can create schedules, for example, all the counts. You could specify a specific date and hour. You could specify every day if you wanted to, or the first, second, third. So for example, you could create and run an analysis on the, first Friday of every month. And then Mercury will make sure that that analysis is performed every single month. And if you've enabled the email notifications and email SMTP within Mercury, you can even specify an email, and Mercury will notify you when the analysis begins. In the event that it discovers any problems during that analysis, such as corrupt files that need to be converted from 32-bit static because they're approaching the 2 gig limit to 64-bit static or to dynamic, all those files and issues would be emailed to you as well, letting you know what files need attention. If your system supports concurrent resizing, you could even go ahead and create a configuration to perform your resizing. So you could literally configure your system to do the analysis and the resizing on its own for a complete set it and forget it type environment. In addition to performing the normal analysis and resizing capabilities, there's also a U2 cleaner This allows you to specify which accounts, and you can specify various options, such as you can specify the various directory type files and the maximum age to retain in that file, and whether to do it on an account by account basis or for all accounts. You can specify parameters within Mercury to clean, as well as within Unidata and Universe, what to keep for in the saved logs. Once that's done, you can run the analysis process, which will go through and collect all the information that can be cleaned up from your system. The first phase is basically analysis. After that analysis, if you want to proceed with the cleanup, a simple clicking of run the cleaner will go through and clean up everything that it discovered for you and recover that disk space. Mercury also has a file mover that allows you to move files. The mover will target a specific file in a specific account. It can move it from one location to another. It can overwrite existing files if you specify that. You can do a copy or a move, and you can have it correct the voc entries on both sides. When you do copy a file, if for example it's a static file that has indexes, Mercury will make sure that all associated files, the X underscores, everything is copied with it so that it's a complete copy, nothing is forgotten. Under the settings capability, you have the ability to specify parameters to control the analysis and resize. For example, under the DB properties, you can specify the method that is to be used to calculate the new size. You can specify, say, from whatever the system recommends, plus a percentage, or straight what it recommends, or you can utilize Mercury's smart size capability, which actually looks at historical trends on that particular file and sizes it accordingly to keep the file properly sized for a longer period of time between resizes. You can specify parameters and options for repair as to what to focus on, whether or not it should create a backup before making repairs, and to reanalyze the file after doing repairs. You can also specify some additional options, such as how many threads you want analyzing each individual account. You could, for example, here have 3 threads analyzing each account. That will get you through your analysis and your resizing faster, as one process may be busy churning out a very large file while the other remaining 2 processes could be churning out analysis on smaller files. This allows you to get through your analysis and your resizing much quicker, reducing your downtime as well as your maintenance window. You can even specify static file conversion thresholds. So when it does discover a file that meets or exceeds this particular threshold, to have it automatically converted to, say, a 64-bit static file if your system supports 64-bit. Otherwise, it would convert to a dynamic file at that point. Other capabilities allow you to control the minimum and maximum block sizes that will be available on your system for resizing. You can specify critical file selection. This is a great tool that allows you to pre-select files on an account-by-account basis that are critical to your operations, so that in the event that you happen to have a disaster, once you bring your system back up, you have your various files that are, say, critical to that operation pre-checked, so that just a simple matter of going to the critical file analysis would allow you to, with one click, analyze all those pre-checked files. It will also let you know, based on historical data, how long that analysis is expected to take. This allows you to recover and recertify your system faster after a failure to get the business back up and running quickly by making sure that critical files are functioning properly and there's no damage. And then you can choose after hours to go ahead and do a more thorough analysis to verify all your files. In addition to that, you have the ability for you can place wrappers on a particular file. So for either a pre or post analysis, resize, or repair, you can enter in your own ECL commands in here to be executed before or after the particular function is executed. This allows you, for example, during repairs, if you wanted to close a particular account or you had specific maintenance routines that had to be run prior to doing a resize, you could launch those particular commands here to do that pre-process or that post-process as well. It also gives you some directions so that you can actually embed some account information and everything into the command line. So if you want to give it commands for certain accounts or things like that, you can do that as well. Beyond the database administration portions, there's a diagnostic capability. With this, you can actually select the particular options you want to run on or apply to the UDT diag or the UV diag. And once you've selected these and you hit begin diagnostic, Mercury will actually launch that diagnostic in background. And once it is completed, it will zip up or tar up that particular file. If you have selected an FTP location to send that to, for example, Rocket Support, you could put in, say, a ticket in here, and when you run that, that analysis will be tarred up, zipped up, depending upon your particular operating system, and then FTP'd to the Rocket FTP server under your particular ticket that you've entered in here. It expedites getting the analysis information to Rocket quickly and get you through your ticket issues much quicker. You can also review your logs on your system. This displays the last 64K of any of the logs that are in your system. In the event that any of these logs trigger an alert that you needed to be aware of, Mercury will continue to remind you on that, and we'll get into that momentarily. But you can clear these logs simply by hitting the archive. Mercury will not delete a log. It simply will move that log into the saved logs directory by renaming the file and putting in your current log a date and timestamp and location as to where that log was moved to, so that Mercury will always maintain a chain of custody and order of your logs. You can edit the UD or UV accounts file as well, or configuration file. Reference gives you access to various websites as well. Security, this allows you to be able to set up users for individual access to Mercury and allows you to specify what they're allowed to access. So for example, you could actually configure a user that has access to only a handful of capabilities, such as a help desk may have access to the list users and list locks, but not the ability to analyze or resize your system. That way you could pick and choose the features that certain individuals have. You can also specify languages that Mercury will translate screens and menus to. That is on an individual basis. So you can select any language that you want. Mercury will do the translation on the fly. You can also create various security groups that you can assign users to. So for example, you could create an administrator or a junior DBAs group or users, whatever you want on that. Within that, you can also specify that group as to which account groups that they will have access. In the account maintenance area, you can actually create categories or groups for your accounts so that you can specify later on here if, for example, a particular user group is allowed to have access to, say, just the QA accounts or to development or whatever. The services, in the event that a service alert comes up, say over in this menu over here, or this little widget over here, if you get an email with such an alert, such as a corrupt file, anything like that, those alerts will show up here. And they can continue to send you alerts in as little as every 5 minutes, or once a day, or once only. That is completely configurable. But if you wanted to, the alerts would show up here, and you could check off a particular alert and hit acknowledge to stop that alert from reminding you constantly. It also gives the ability to find out who and when an alert was acknowledged. You also have the ability here to set up user-defined schedules. So if you wanted to run, for example, a diagnostic on a regular basis, you could actually specify the time of day, the particular day, and which day of the week you want it to run. And you could specify, say, the command perform diagnostic, and Mercury will make sure that it executes a diagnostic based on the current configuration that you have in the UT diags. It'll run it on a regular basis. If you have it set to email or FTP it to you, it will FTP it on that schedule as well. You can also look at user-defined reports, historical logs. So if you wanted to look at, say, benchmarks as to how often that's run and what the results are of that, you can see every date and time that that particular schedule was executed. It's sorted in most recent to the oldest. So in this particular case, we can see when that was particularly run and what the status was that it was successful. In addition to that, we have the health system. The health system allows you to run benchmarks on your particular system. So you could run a benchmark and collect information on CPU, disk, memory. We're constantly working on adding to this and expanding on the capabilities of this benchmark routine. Currently, it works just on a isolated system. The eventual goal is to move this into connecting to our central server at Paradigm Systems, where benchmark information can be shared, sent up to our server without any identifying marks as to who the client is or whatever. We're just interested in the configuration of the hardware. The eventual goal is to also send up UDT configuration information as well, so that through sharing this information, it becomes possible for Mercury to identify other systems that are using different configurations and zero in on an optimal configuration for your particular environment. So if, for example, somebody had the exact same CPU and configuration that you had, but their system was running more efficiently than yours, Mercury would have access to those configurations to find out what is different between your configuration and theirs and try to help you tune your system. To do that, Mercury collects information on a regular basis. So you can, for example, look at LCT usage. You can look at memory load statistics. System load statistics. So that you can see exactly how your system is behaving. So that as you make changes and modify the configurations, you can see how things modify and change. You can rerun the benchmarks if necessary, see how it makes an improvement on your particular system. And all of this information, it can actually drill down to, for example, if you want to look at, let's say today from, say, between noon and 1, down to the 5-minute interval. So we could see down in 5-minute intervals what kind of system load we were having. We could look at SLTs, any of the information that we have available. All this information, including user statistics. We collect information such as how many users, how many U2 licenses are in use, how many SQL users are on the system, number of phantoms and iPhantoms in use at any given time. And if your system is configured for connection pools, we capture the number of connection pools at use at any given time and the yield or number of users that those connection pools are serving. So we can collect a lot of information, and all that information is funneled into our routines to be able to auto-tune your system so that we can identify and do comparisons of and run through certain formulas to find out what is the optimum values for each of your parameters within the UDT or UV config file. You can then pick and choose the particular parameters you want to apply, acknowledge that you understand the impact, and hit the update. Once you've updated them, Mercury will actually create a backup of the current UDT or UV config. It'll then make the changes. It's then up to you to go ahead and restart Unidata or Universe to make those particular changes take effect. But once you do that, then you can continue to select information or run additional benchmarks to see how your system has improved with those particular configurations. From there, we also have the utilities, various utilities, so you can get a file size calculator to determine the size to create an initial file if you're creating something. We have a text editor. We have the list users. So if you wanted to look and see how many users are on your system, what they're doing, you can even drill down and get a port status on a particular port and find out what a particular port is running. You can even see which ones are Mercury related and which ones are for the Mercury scheduler. So you can drill into those. You can even select one or multiple users and log them off. If you select multiple users, Mercury, if you try to log them off, is going to prompt for a validation just to make sure that you're doing what you want to do. You actually want to do this. If you don't, it won't log them off. In addition to the list users, you can look at the locking queue, see how many locks are in place, any record locks that are in place, any semaphore locks if we have those on the system. Additionally, there's also a data extractor, and I'm going to close a few of these items. The data extractor comes with some pre-configured extracts here that will allow you to extract data from Mercury. So for example, if we wanted to see what our system load was, we could actually run this routine right here by clicking on the run or play button. This will show us a extract. So for example, we just generated this item here. We can then download that as a CSV and see what our system load stats are throughout the day in 5-minute increments so that we can build our own graph or do whatever you want within Excel or that data. So you can also go ahead if you wanted to and build your own extracts. If, for example, you wanted to build an extract, you could specify the name of the extract, the account that you're going to target, the particular file in that account, whether you want it as CSV, XML, or TXT. We're working to add JSON to that as well. You can specify a destination to have it either emailed or FTP'd to a particular location. You can then specify a schedule as to how often to do that extract. You can then specify selection criteria, sortation criteria, and the columns that you want to include in that report. So for example, if we were to go and edit this one, we could see that we are selecting this particular information. We are sorting it by year, month, day, hour, minute, and the columns that we are going to be extracting are these. We can change the order of those as well. But once that's done, then with a simple click, you can execute, or you can have that scheduled to run as needed. Additionally, there is, you can specify the additional FTP recipients that you want. Currently, Rocket and Paradigm are the ones that are set up in there. So you can add as many FTP locations as you want. We are working on adding secure FTP. We're hoping to have that in within the next 1 or 2 releases. In addition to that, we have a Phantom viewer. The Phantom viewer will display a list of all fields or entries in the PH file on the target account. From there, you can actually go in and click and view that particular log file. If it's a current log file that's currently in the process of building, you could actually specify a refresh rate and have that updated regularly so you could actually monitor a PH file as it's being built. In addition to that, you have the ability to ping, look at shared programs. The IP scanner, that allows you to scan a network range of IPs. You can specify the number of Phantom processes it's going to utilize to complete the task, and it will tell you various information about each particular IP that it finds, right down to the manufacturer of the hardware. This is the first step in a series of new utilities that we are generating and creating in hopes to be able to do inventory and network inventory and things like that. The Sentry module, which I skipped until now, this is an interesting tool which allows you to monitor, if you, depending upon the licenses that you have and the number of systems that you're monitoring, you can actually specify and have multiple systems monitored with Mercury. This is one of the utilities that we use here at Paradigm Systems. This is our demo test display, but we can actually monitor multiple systems and see regularly what is going on those particular systems. So we can see what alerts are happening. We can take a look at any file issues that happen to have cropped up. So we can look at all that stuff. And the way that this is facilitated is through the control panel. There's a feature in Mercury called Guardian. And with Guardian, you can specify, say, the IP or URL of another, say, the Paradigm Mercury server and the port that we're monitoring. And if Guardian is configured and enabled, it will send periodic information, telemetry, to our server or to any Sentry server that you've configured as well. So if you're monitoring multiple systems for your clients, you could actually configure those clients to send to your Mercury console and remotely monitor all of your clients as well. We are working on an expansion on this right now. The only protocol that's supported is Mercury. We are working on adding Zabbix, Nagios, and others to this as well. But in here, you'll notice that we have some additional configuration capabilities. For example, the active scan, that can be configured if you have a lot of 32-bit files on your system that are static. You can specify a threshold and how often per day for Mercury to monitor those files. If you have it enabled and you have an email specified, then Mercury will scan and locate any files that exceed the preset limit and notify you on a daily basis that those should be candidates for resizing or conversion, say, to a 64-bit static or to dynamic. The warning flags capability allows you to specify key phrases and words to be monitored in your UDT or UV logs. Essentially, any one of these phrases that are found in to be configured, if they are located within the logs, Mercury will actually can send out a notice and let you know that there is either it's a yellow alert, a red a warning, an alert, or a critical issue. You can even specify your own directory files and have Mercury monitor those as well. And then you could put in your key phrases to look for within your logs as well. The same holds true for file systems. You can specify which file systems, whether it's Unix or Windows, and the thresholds you want to maintain for the specific alerts, and even if you want to monitor or not monitor that particular file system. And then you can specify any email addresses to send notices to when an event occurs, and how often to send in a reminder email. If you have it set to never, it'll send one email and that is it. Or you can send it, down to every 5 minutes or every hour, whatever you want as well. There's also a little checkbox here to even exclude these particular types from alerts. Some people, for example, may not want to be notified on notices, but will want warnings and alerts and critical issues to be notified. So you can do that as well. And any alert that shows up would also show up here in the alert box as well. Other capabilities in here, system identification. This allows you to identify your system both for use by Guardian in case telemetry is being sent to a remote server, as well as a system ID to display as well. So depending upon what you have, you can have, for example, this system name. If you check this box, then it'll actually come up as a watermark. So if you're running multiple systems, you can easily identify which system is which. The business hours option, when enabled, allows you to specify the hours of operation that a resize or repair are not to be permitted. So for example, you could specify, from 6 a.m. to, let's say, 8 p.m. and enable that. And Monday through Friday, essentially that tells Mercury, do not do any resizing or repairs on these days during these hours. If, however, for example, let's say on Sunday late at night, you had a scheduled process that is running resizing, and you have a particularly long resize, let's say concurrent resize that's running, or even non-concurrent, that decides, 6 a.m., that resize is still going on, and there's still 20 files to be resized, and it comes to be Monday morning, 6 a.m., when Mercury finishes with the current resize that it's working on, the particular file, it will see that it is 6 a.m. and it's not allowed to run beyond that. It will stop the resizing at that point, even though there are, say, 20 other files waiting to be resized. It will stop and not proceed any further. You could then have another schedule that picks up, say, at night, that would finish up any files that did not get resized the previous during the previous session. Or you could save those till the following weekend or a following resize session. The master scheduler, here you can either stop or start it. There are several sub-schedulers Each of these subschedulers has a specific task. You can actually turn them on or off depending upon what you want them, whether you want them running or not. For example, if you have the account file cache, what that does is periodically that runs and that scans file and builds a preloaded cache of all the files in all of your accounts. If you have that turned off, then every time you want to display, say, the File Explorer and get a list of the files in an account, Mercury will have to get that file at that list of files at that time. By running the cache, Mercury can just read a preset cache and display that. And what this routine does is it adds and subtracts to that cache as files are added and created and deleted. So it keeps that cache up to date. Database administration is this subscheduler that allows running scheduled analysis and resize. And you can control any of these subtasks as well that it runs. Mercury can also be set to run as a U2 Phantom or as a cron job or as a task manager. So you can have the master scheduler running as either task manager or a cron. That allows you to literally not even have to start Mercury, either the console or the Phantom processes. As long as your system is running and that, say, task manager is running, it will periodically kick in and make sure that certain tasks in Mercury are performed on a regular basis, so that nothing gets missed, so that you still get your notifications and alerts, as needed. The scheduler does require a lock, so this gives you the ability to change the lock that Mercury uses. So if you're using, in this case, the default of 62, if you're utilizing that lock or it becomes a conflict with other utilities, you can change that to whatever you want. Now, each of these gets fired off as a Phantom, so you can either allow those to run off as Phantoms, or if it does cause issues, as older versions of Universe do have issues with some Phantom issues, you can specify to disable child Phantom processes, and this basically says each one of these will run in series, in sequence, under the master scheduler, so that just the one process that's running. It may take longer to execute all of these and get things done, but they will get done, and they will get done as the master scheduler itself, as opposed to launching child Phantoms. Mercury also has a syslog, so if you maintain a syslog server, you can actually specify what Mercury events that take place will get sent to that syslog server. You can either specify to have them logged locally in Mercury's own syslog file, or you can also specify, if you have a remote syslog file, you can enable that, specify the URL or the IP port and information about that, and send each of these as a transaction to your own syslog server. If you have query analysis enabled, you can even have Mercury send all queries that contain selection criteria to your syslog server as well. That does get a little cumbersome if you do a lot of queries and a lot of selects on your system. That's generally should only be checked, as necessary. And essentially that is about it. You'll also notice one last thing is Mercury does support SSL TLS. So as you can see, we're running as an HTTPS server. We have certificates created for Mercury. And this allows you here to upload your SSL cert and private key to Mercury. It is all maintained in the Mercury files. They are secured. No information is, such as passwords or anything, are visible. So everything is, encrypted and stored confidentially within Mercury as well. But this would allow you to create, websites within Mercury that are utilizing SSL. So once you get in there, you could actually specify the certs that you wanted to use, any parameters, things like that. You can even set up additional web servers if you wanted to create your own web services and have those up and running as well. And that, my friends, is a quick introduction to Mercury Flash. I hope you enjoyed it and you found this very helpful. If you'd like to get some more detailed information on it, please feel free to visit our website at or give us a call, and we'd be happy to set up a private demonstration for you and get into the details of Mercury. Thank you.